Tonight on the Your Life Matters Show podcast.
From '08 to 2014, I was driving tractor trailer. I actually came off the road because of the lung issues I was starting to have. I couldn't get in and out of the truck. So I went to doing factory work for Great Dane, North America, in Terre Haute. And when I couldn't pass their physical, I went to delivering pizzas. So I everything progressed down, just got to less and less of using my lungs.
On a personal note, I smiled throughout this whole story here. But it's been a very tough story even for me tonight. Like, it makes a difference. I was originally misdiagnosed with IPF, correctly with restrictive lung disease. As I say, same crap, different day. Carl's condition, sadly, is much further along than I am. But his and I, our hearts and minds are really in the same place.
Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you made the choice to watch our show this evening and joining us for another episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast with your hosts Steve Hodgson and Dr. Eric L. Davis.
Tonight's episode is titled, Every Breath is a Battle, a Father's Story of IPF and Hope. Imagine struggling to breathe, not just after running a race or climbing stairs, but every moment of every day. For more than 100,000 Americans, and countless more worldwide, this is life with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF. IPF is a progressive, incurable lung disease that scars the lungs, making each breath harder than the last. Treatments can slow the disease, but for many, the future is uncertain. And beyond the physical challenges, the emotional weight is profound. For patients, for their families, and for the caregivers who walk this journey alongside them. IPF doesn't just shorten life. Its symptoms and unpredictability have large effects on how people live, mentally, socially, physically. The Your Life Matters Show podcast is about mental health. Even though we need to know about the guest and the reason for his disease, we will not delve too deep medically into IPF. Instead, we will explore not only what IPF does to the body, but what it does to the mind and spirit. We'll talk about fear, resilience, and the courage it takes to live with a disease that steals breath, but not hope. Joining us this evening is Carl Whipple, a husband and father living with advanced IPF, and also joining us will be his wife and caregiver, Melissa. Together we'll look at the mental health impact of end-of-life illnesses and what it means to truly live in the face of profound challenges. Because no matter the illness, no matter the struggle, your life matters, and so does your story. Here are your hosts.
Well, howdy, everyone, and welcome to the Your Life Matters Show podcast. I'm Steve Hodgson. As always, I'm honored to be here and joined by my co-host and great friend, psychotherapist, Dr. Eric L. Davis. Dr. Davis, we have a different type of show tonight than I think that we've done before. It gets to a very serious topic, and we're going to try to keep approaching it from a mental health side, even though we're going to talk about the medical side a little bit during it because we really going to have to. As you know, each week on the show, we talk about many mental health issues that touch our lives, from the challenges of everyday stress to the impact of trauma, caregiving, loss, and resilience. And tonight's conversation is one that's deeply moving and important. Because tonight we're going to focus on IPF, which is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Okay, it's a rare and progressive lung disease that causes scarring in the lungs, makes every breath harder than the one before. Now, more than 100,000 Americans live with IPF, and many more around the world are affected. You'll actually be shocked. You saw probably in the opening some of the numbers of that. As someone who was originally diagnosed with it, I was shocked at how many people had it because I'd never heard of it before. But it's often overlooked, and it's not just the medical side of the disease that's really overlooked, but the emotional and mental health impact on the person that lives with it, their caretakers, on the family, the loved ones, and anyone who walks that road alongside them, friends and stuff. So on tonight's special episode, we're going to hear the story of Carl Whipple. Okay, he's a husband, a father, who's been living with advanced IPF for a long time and now been change of diagnosis for him as well. And he'll share what it's like to face such a difficult illness and how it's affected his life and the way he finds strength, meaning, and hope, even during the hardest days. Now, as you may have heard on the show, as I said, I originally was diagnosed with IPF. Later on, changed to restrictive lung disease and was treated for 2 or 3 years with IPF. I was taking some heavy medications that was supposed to help it. When I moved to Florida, I was properly diagnosed, but it's really all the same in the long run. It's an end-of-life disease, so, cut and dry. So if you followed this podcast and what I also often call the prior reincarnations of this show, you'll remember that I did a show on IPF with 2 other people. One was a caretaker for his dad, and one was our guest this evening, Carl Whipple. And actually, I even talked Jen into doing the show, okay, because it wasn't Jen and Steve at that point. It was just my show. So this is really a follow-up of the other show. And our goal tonight is to talk about the disease. The fact that that's not really our focus, the medical part, but it's to shed light on the human experience of someone living with that they take away the breath, not the spirit. It's about courage, about vulnerability, and it's about mental health. Our ability to cope, to adapt, and connect becomes just as important as any medication or treatment.
Let's be real. Life can feel overwhelming. Sometimes we lose our direction. And in those moments, reaching out for help isn't weakness. It's strength. One of the most powerful things we can do for our mental health is simply to stop and ask for help. Well, look no further. Let me tell you about Waypost Counseling in Indianapolis, Indiana. Waypost was co-founded by husband and wife team Dr. Eric L. Davis and licensed therapist Aaron Davis. They started Waypost Counseling in 2020 because they wanted to create more than just a therapy practice. They wanted a place that truly walks alongside people through life's hardest seasons. And they offer more than just individual therapy. They provide individual therapy and couples therapy, problem gambling disorder, and consulting services as well. They work with adults navigating everything from ADHD to grief, addiction to life transitions. Every journey is different, but our goal is always the same: to help people pause, reflect, and realign with where they want to go. It's actually where their name, Waypost, comes from. A marker on the path, something to help guide your next steps. And for anyone listening who's been thinking, I don't know where to start, this might be the moment. Therapy doesn't have to be intimidating. At Waypost, you'll find honesty, warmth, and a practical approach to real change. They're here to help you find direction and walk with you every step of the way. Whether you are in Indiana or anywhere in the United States, help is just a phone call away. They treat clients in person or using video conferencing directly from your home. If you're ready to start that journey, visit waypostcounseling.com or call Dr. Eric L. Davis at 317-762-0904 or therapist Aaron Davis at 317-659-0179 and take the first step. Waypost Counseling is proudly certified by the Indiana FSSA Division of Mental Health and Addiction and the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Abuse. That's www.waypostcounseling.com. Your next chapter starts here. You need to make that first call.
So sit back, and we invite you to stay with us, listen with compassion, and carry those insights forward in your own lives. Because no matter the illness, no matter the struggle, your life matters. Now, Dr. Davis, before we get into the questions and stuff I have, I guess we need to just take a minute, briefly explain what IPF is. It's a rare and progressive lung disease. Idiopathic means they don't know what causes it. Pulmonary means it affects the lungs, and fibrosis means scarring. I mean, that's the whole disease, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. That's what it is. It's basically, we don't know where you got it from. Okay, it affects your lungs and it's scarring in your lungs. And that scarring is, when you think if it scars the lung walls, that's where oxygen passes in and out that we breathe. And if it's scarred, the oxygen can't pass in and out. That's why it affects us and eventually kills people with it. It makes those lungs stiff and less able to move oxygen into the bloodstream. Um, Over time, simple things like walking across the room or having a conversation is exhausting. And I can tell you, as someone who originally dealt with it, having breath for long conversations. I mean, I thought I'd never even be able to sing again because even in the car when I tried to sing, I couldn't get more than like 2 or 3 words out before I had to stop and grab breath again. Um, Sadly, right now there's no cure. There's a couple of different treatments they're trying. I saw something last night, as you know, will you hear me talk about on IPF that there is a new therapy that's going to stage 2 that they're trying and has some hope. It's actually regenerating the tissues in the lungs, and so far so good. But really, there's no cure right now. And sadly, some patients qualify for lung transplant, but not everything goes as planned. Because if you have some other thing like bad diabetes or something, they won't do it. You know, you won't be able to get the lung transplant. And then, of course, insurance companies might turn around and say, no, they're not going to pay for it. And it takes a huge physical toll as well as a mental toll for the person that's living with the caretakers, etc. That's what makes stories like Carl's so important to hear tonight. So, from a mental perspective, what conditions like IPF or any interstitial lung disease, ILD, especially challenging for patients? You know, what is it like? Why is it so challenging for us?
Well, first of all, because it's affecting the body, but then even outside of that, it's affecting the person's daily life. There are significant changes that happen. So obviously, the symptoms that a person's dealing with can limit their mobility, can cause fatigue. Um, it's just major changes to the lifestyle, and that can create some mental strain. It's a lot to deal with all at once.
You know, how about its unpredictability? Because I'm sure Carl will talk about, later on, how you can go from being like on 2 liters up to like 5 or 6 liters, overnight.
Yeah.
That's got to affect this person's sense of hope or even control.
Absolutely. I think it definitely would. In situations where such as this, I think what's most important is to take a look at everything that's happening, and there's so much that we have no control over. But if we can hone in, it's hard to do, but if we can hone in on the things that we do have some control over, that can make a difference, and so that would involve taking a look at, the daily relationships, maybe some daily goals, um, just having a routine that you can adhere to.
And that's the thing. You have to have a routine. You have to keep doing things for your health. I'm sure even, our guest tonight will tell us you can't just submit to the disease. You have to fight the disease. And when you're fighting the disease, you actually slow its progression down. And I think, secondly, too, from a mental point of view, it does give you a sense of health, hope, and help because it does help you breathe better. But it also gives you that sense of help that I'm doing something and what I'm doing actually, I'm taking control of the disease a little bit because when you lose control over that, you basically lost control over your will to want to live,
Yeah.
And the second thing is many patients describe oxygen dependence as life altering. What kind of emotions do you see connected to that?
I think, my dad had oxygen after COVID. So, he had oxygen for a time. And I just remember, I think back to that. And I know that, I'd never really experienced that with a family member until then. And so I know that it was kind of a mix of emotions where on the one hand, there was a lot of relief, because he could breathe more easily, which helped him to feel better. But then there was also, so that's the upside. That's why the oxygen's prescribed. But on the other side of the coin, I think that there was some embarrassment maybe about going out in public, or I think that sometimes he was afraid that it would make him appear weak, or those sorts of things where um, it's important. It's a really important thing to be able to breathe. So, and that was the thing. It was like, well, Dad, whatever it takes, you know.
It's funny because I talked about the show as a follow-up. The show that I originally did a few years back had another caregiver that was on the show. A gentleman, he was probably in his 30s or 40s. Um, he was a caregiver for his dad, and his dad was just diagnosed with IPF and was told he needed to wear oxygen, but would not. He was embarrassed to wear his oxygen around his friends. He would go golfing all the time. He refused, literally refused to take oxygen with him. And he'd come back and he would be dazed, exhausted, and stuff. And he used to tell him, go wear your oxygen. Well, no, I don't want. Your friends are not, if they're your friends, they're not going to care
Right.
that you're wearing oxygen. And, I can tell you for my sake, yeah, we don't want that special attention that you get sometimes. When people look at you, it's almost like a sympathy sometimes look. And, I don't need your pity because that's what it feels like sometimes to us. You know what? I'm not asking for pity. Don't give it to me. Just this is what I wear to stay alive and stay healthy. And, as you see on this show, I can still smile and I feel really good. And, I go out and I still feel really good. I go out many times with friends and stuff, and, we have a good time. So the worst thing we want is pity, just to let you know. We have some self-esteem, okay? We can talk about self-esteem, but I want to briefly talk about caregivers and the families. Like you mentioned, with your dad, with the family. I know even in my own home that I had to deal with, Jen had to get used to stepping over the wires, and we all tripped over the cord, the
Yeah.
oxygen hose. Okay. My dogs would trip over and get caught in it. They still do to this very day. At least the one stopped chewing on the hoses. Okay. Because I swear they were trying to kill me at one point. But what are some of the biggest psychological challenges that caregivers and family members face when supporting someone that has IPF?
Well, I think there's a constant push and pull between, it's a balancing act because you want to care for that person, and there's all the feelings that go into that, someone that you love and care about is not well, etc. So that you want to care for the person, but at the same time, it's we have to be careful not to lose ourselves in the process. Where, I've said it a million times, and I'm sure I'll say it a million more, but self-care really is crucial, especially for caregivers. Um, you know, being a therapist, I'm a caregiver kind of for a living. I'm an emotional caregiver. Um, it's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else has going on and lose sight of my own self-care or my own, things I'm dealing with. Um, so having that balance is crucial. I think another thing that's important for caregivers to keep in mind is that, sometimes feeling frustrated or, exhausted, um, even irritated or angry to an extent, that is totally normal, and it does not mean that, you're not taking care of the person. It's just those it's a lot to deal with, so keeping those things in mind and giving
It's
yourself a little bit of grace to, have
it's
feelings.
strange because the first time Jen got frustrated with me over things, and it's be like, you know, lady, in my head, it's like, you're not the one wearing it. But then like you said, when you step back and you realize that it's natural for them to feel that, because they go through grief, guilt, even exhaustion
Mhm.
sometimes taking care of us.
Yeah.
I know for me, before we had the guy mowing the grass, I would try to go out and mow the grass. I couldn't do it, so she would go out and do it. And that's exhausting when you're studying for school,
Sure.
and you got to take care of that. You got to clean the house and stuff. So I try to do my part, not as much as I should, but I do my part as far as like cleaning up the house. But I do dishes and stuff. I make sure I do my own laundry, and we eat different foods because she
Yeah.
eats a lot different than I do. So we make our own foods, and we clean up after ourselves. So it helps a little bit. And I know that you said something there about, doctors or you're a emotions thing, but I think even a medical doctor, or let's say in my case here, a pulmonologist, has to
Mhm.
be a little of both
Absolutely.
when he
Absolutely.
or
Yeah.
she is dealing with a patient.
Definitely.
Yeah, because I know mine is. I got to give a lot of credit because he'll sometimes even just in after he's gone through the medical part, he'll sit there and say, "So how are you doing?"
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, and I always use joke, better if I didn't just have to drive 45 minutes to come here. Okay, have
Better
to
if you
lug an
didn't ask me
oxygen
all these
tank. Yeah,
questions.
yeah, but no, and he knows I'm joking with him, but I get what is that why he's asking me,
Yeah.
and he knows with me that I might say something, but you know what? I still say that 99% of us will tell him everything is great and just smile. Peachy is what I used to say all the time because I really explained my mood at that point. Oh, yeah, I'm feeling peachy today. Hey, no problem. So, in your experience, we'll go back we'll ask them with the caregiver one more time. You think the role is different if someone has a chronic progressive illness compared to like a sudden or, an acute illness?
Yeah, I think so. If someone has a sudden or acute illness, I mean, there's going to be caregiving, but it's probably going to be a shorter duration. It's probably going to be a shorter time period in some cases. When it's a chronic illness that, is progressive, et cetera, then sometimes you can get into areas where, someone may be a caretaker for years at a time or something. And I think it's just important to remember that caregiving is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And um, it's there's a lot of support out there to help individuals if they're feeling burned out or so forth.
It's we when you take your vows, it's like for better, for worse, richer, for it's in sickness and in health. And I think when you get a chronic, progressive illness, that tests that sickness and health to another level.
Yeah,
Because, you think you're having to deal with the whiny butt, who's got a cold, and the whole world is coming to an end because they have a cold this week and they don't feel good. But it's different when, you got somebody who you say, come on, we really just don't feel up to it today.
yeah. And the thing
I've
too, I
learned there's
think,
no sin in saying that. You have to say
right.
it. I, you
Well,
know, I can't live for
you,
you. I got to live for me too.
you made me think of, the other thing as a caregiver, I think that people need to keep in mind is that, especially, we talked about like feeling burnout or exhausted, but asking for help as a caregiver is not failure. That really is if a person is completely overwhelmed or just feels like they're drowning and they just can't keep up, there's nothing wrong with asking for help, you know.
Yep. And I mean, you gave us some strategies and coping tools already, but can community, faith, even peer support play a role in improving quality of life?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, peer support, um, connectedness in the community, I think regardless of what a person's dealing with, I think that those things are so crucial, because the number one, um, when someone's dealing with an illness or something, they feel alone. So number one, it lets us know, hey, I'm not alone. There are other people that are dealing with this same type of thing. And then even better, it's, well, they said that here are things that were helpful for them and here are things that weren't. And so it's like, you kind of um, find similar individuals and you can learn from them.
I think
So in
one of the
addition,
hardest thing a patient that has that critical long-term illness has to realize is that other people have lives too.
yeah,
That it's such a tough, it's like, you start to get that, what about me syndrome? But you can't, somebody, your support person can help you, but you also can't expect them to give up their life
yeah,
also. They will stay with you. They're not going to kick you, but hopefully not going to kick you by the roadside or anything, but you have to let them go a little bit too. Why you can take, I mean, it's different if, you can
yeah.
get up and breathe and stuff. You get a full-time nurse at that point, if that's the case. But
And I would say with a
I
caregiver, if
mhm,
their self-care is as important
right.
a part of the caregiving as the actual giving of care. So, I mean, it's like without that, you can't effectively be the best caregiver you can be if you're not taking care of yourself.
What about someone who's falling into that trap of you know, what do I want to say, like sadness or, the guilt, the me type of situation. Okay, what kind of interventions can be done to bring some hope and stuff to them?
Well, I think that so number one, reaching out for, you can reach out for professional help. You can, if that's not an option, you can reach out for community help or support, you know, of some kind. Um, I think the biggest thing is just not to keep it a secret. That's where I would start is tell somebody, tell somebody that you trust and that, that has your back. Or if you don't have anyone close to you, reach out and speak to a therapist. Reach out and talk to someone that can help you figure these things out.
And if you're feeling really, really down, remember 988. We haven't
Oh,
said that yet
absolutely.
this episode. Okay, that
Yep,
there is somebody on the other end that's standing by that will help you and talk to you. Because
absolutely.
sometimes all you need is someone to talk to.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they're trained professionals. It's not just, Jane who's looking for a part-time job. I mean, it's trained professionals that are out there that are looking. Um, Before we talked about transplants, um, and someone who gets that hope, okay, great, okay, I'm a candidate for a transplant,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden finds out that they can't get that transplant for whatever reason. I mean, I watched on YouTube a number of things last night because I actually looked up that specific topic, and I was surprised at the things that I found out. How does someone guide themselves emotionally through that kind of disappointment?
Well, I think that, that's a lot. That would be a lot of disappointment to deal with. The first thing that I would do is just normalize, that their feelings, because that is a huge disappointment, a huge letdown. Um, it's we can't change that, but what we can change is our daily life or, what we do each day. And I think that, for me as a person in recovery, which is no secret, I'm completely open about that. It's not a secret to anybody. But I mean, when I think of, oh my gosh, this many years or this, that's just overwhelming to me. That absolutely floors me. What I can focus on is my recovery just for today. Like a day at a time that's more than enough for me to deal with. And, um, I think especially in times that are difficult, it's important to remember that just making it through today is what ultimately matters in the long run. It's all I got.
Right. Well, I don't think there's a better time to bring our guest in today. Our guest is Carl Whipple. Now, I met Carl online about 7 years ago when I lived in Indiana. I believe we were in the same IPF chat room on Facebook. We started talking, found out he lived in Indiana. Our conversation struck up a friendship and connection that's still strong to this very day. I mean, we literally, if anything else, we send memes together to each other every single day here. Calls a husband, a father. Um, well, actually, I should say he's a father. He's a good uncle to his children. For a while, he was taking care of, two very lovely children. Now, Carl lives with advanced IPF. His wife, Melissa, who's, his wife, has taken care of him. She's taken on that role of not only a spouse, but a caretaker. Um, and we'll learn a little bit more about her tonight. Now, Carl's story is one of resilience in the face of uncertainty. He's dealt with a lot since the last time we spoke to him, yet he continues to face each day with courage, honesty, and love for his family. Well, it's Your Life Matters Show honor to welcome Carl to our show today, Carl Whipple. Carl, thank you for joining our show this evening. It's an honor to have you on with us and be willing to share your story to other people who might be having the same problem or even to our listeners. Now, Carl, I'm going to start with you here. Just some background for our listeners. When did you originally get diagnosed with IPF? And talk to us about how it progressed.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Well, it was what, 2018 when I was finally diagnosed. Well, they formally diagnosed me with IPF. They have since taken that diagnosis away from me. I'm now strictly what they call ILD,
ILD, right? Interstitial lung disease.
interstitial, yeah,
Yep, lung disease.
with a um, emphysema umbrella. So they have gotten rid of that overhead on me for the most part. But yeah, it was 2018 when I got that um, diagnosis, and from there I went downhill fairly quickly for the most part. From what I was, I mean, I went from a full time job to not being able to do anything within a matter of about 6 months when everything really hit me.
How did that'd be a huge change for anybody, for any reason. I mean, what was that like? How did you process that over time?
That took a lot. I mean, you figure I started working when I was 13. That's all I've ever known. I was in, thanks, dog. Um, let's see, from '08 to 2014, I was driving tractor trailer. Um, I actually came off the road because of the lung issues I was starting to have. I couldn't get in and out of the truck. So I went to doing factory work for Great Dane North America in Terre Haute. Um, and when I couldn't pass their physical, I went to delivering pizzas. So I kind of, everything progressed down, just got to less and less of using my lungs.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it was 2018 when they put me on oxygen, basically put me out of work. And I mean, for the most part, I just kind of accepted it. It was what it was. I still did what I could do. Um, I mean, first year they had me on oxygen, I still swapped out transmissions in a couple of trucks, doing stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing being on disability, but yeah, I ain't dead yet.
Where did they start you with? How many liters?
They started me at 2 liters. Um, in 2018, I was at 2 liters. At the end of 2019, I want to say I was actually when COVID hit, I was still at 2 liters. It wasn't until after it was February of March of 2020, I ended up with pneumonia and I jumped. It put me up to 4. It basically doubled me at that point. And then, of course, with at that point I was going through IU, trying to do transplant. they required that benevolent COVID shot. Well, I ended up with Moderna, and I went to 8 liters instantly.
Yeah.
And
See,
yeah, I got screwed on that aspect.
see, it's amazing because I talk from my end. The beginning they put me on two right away when they thought I had IPF, and I hovered to very slowly raised to four. But personally, I think I only need to be on three because I function very well on 3 liters, not four.
Yep.
Um, but you're right. One of the things, like even my own physicians tell me all the time, they want to know right away. I can't get sick, any kind of lung issues like
Yeah,
pneumonia,
exactly.
or COVID for that matter, because that's like deadly for us. But
Yep.
any kind of lung disease, that's almost like putting you like almost in like ICU or something. I mean, that's really scary time for us.
Well, you figured they're, let's see, 2020, spring and fall, 21, spring and fall, 22, spring and fall. I was sick, each aspect, and each one was 2 weeks in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't even, I want to say there was only 3 of them that were pneumonia. The rest of them, it was just upper respiratory infection. It didn't get as far as being pneumonia right away. But it was already at the 8 liters at that point.
Before I
Um,
go to my next question, I want to stick with the medical side so we can get that out of the way and then go to the mental
yeah,
health side of it. How did they, because this is news to me, but how did they determine that it was an IPF
actually, that happened just
recently? That's
just recently.
hmm
Because I'm in Virginia now. I moved over here to Virginia at the end of 23, to try to do transplant with University of Virginia. My mom lives just north of there, and I've still got my whole regiment of doctors that I've been dealing with. So we're still dealing with pulmonary and all of that, and they had done a bunch of testing, and I had tested for something else and decided that it wasn't. They couldn't find a factor in pulmonary fibrosis. They were feeling it was still more emphysema, and possibly even could have finally found some doctors who said it could have been related to some of my work that I've done in the past because I have done a multitude of things.
So they didn't find any scarring in the lungs.
I do have the scarring from the pneumonia,
Okay, but from the
from the
pneumonia,
years
but not from the
of
IPF.
coughing. Right, not from the IPF.
hmm See, in my case, with when they finally here in Florida said it was restricted lung disease that I had, but the doctor in Indiana, who I won't mention his name, okay, kept treating me as if I had IPF, yet every CAT scan came back saying no scarring of the lungs, no scarring of the lungs, no IPF. I mean, literally the result at the bottom of each one of those. And of course, I never saw those. Doctor doesn't
Right.
say, here, let me share this with you. Or he would come back to me and say, hey, Steve, it's working really, really great. Keep taking the OFEV and you'll be fine.
That's
And
the funny thing. I'm still on the OPEP.
are you?
Yep, because that has actually, when they put me on that, it helped with keeping. See, I was producing the white, the mucus in the lungs,
Mm-hmm.
like was part of the pulmonary fibrosis.
Right.
So that's where I'm still slightly confused. It's like, well, and if I ain't got the fibrosis, then why am I producing said stuff? So, but I mean,
As we
they
said earlier in the show, we talked about IPF and what IPF was. Um, but, I was even watching last night I always research right before we're going to record a show again. For the last time, I go on YouTube and start to watch stuff. And, IPF is, for, again, we've talked about idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. But the idiopathic thing is they have no idea where it came from.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, as my doctor here
Anything
in
could be a
Florida
trigger.
put it, it's basically just, well, they couldn't find anything else, so that's what they gave you as a diagnosis. I mean,
Yep.
it's actually really, really strange on that. You know, pulmonary obviously is your lungs, and fibrosis is the scarring of the lungs and stuff. But it's really strange how they just give you a diagnosis
And then
without
they
really
stick with it. They
backing it
don't.
up.
Then they stick with it,
Hmm.
and it's like, well, we're just going to leave it at that.
Yeah. See, and in my
It's like
case,
I got.
that OFEV was killing me. It was destroying my liver. So
Yeah,
that
because
was
it ain't
really
good
not
for
a
you.
smart thing for me to be taking that, you know, if I didn't have it. You know, I
Yeah.
would have weighed out if you had it, didn't have it, and stuff. Now, let me just ask one other question. So, while it's fresh in my head, so now not having the IPF moniker anymore over your head, okay, you got to be like President Clinton with Monica. No,
Right. Gotta watch that hit on the
Stephen, keep
hips.
it. Yeah, I know we're on YouTube. But I mean, without that now, what is the prognosis? You know,
Probably the
IPF
right
was
one.
almost like a death sentence.
Yeah, really, there's not one. Well, I had the last. When was I? March. March. I did 7 days. They didn't want to send me home because my oxygen usage was so high. Um, but it was like, well, I mean, this is pretty much where I'm at. I have no choice. Um, but yeah, they don't. Basically, it's just try not to get sick because I mean, this is what I'm at. They're not looking at anything really getting any worse as long as I'm not getting sick.
They sort of don't know anything else. And I'm not knocking doctors.
Yeah,
I'm just saying there is no other knowledge of anything else right now. You
no,
know,
there's not.
so that's where we're sitting. So obviously we've talked about IPF, you and I, on the Your Life Matters show prior to this. And there is
Yep,
a link for our listeners in the description so they can click on it and go back and watch that. It's still on YouTube. But
pretty well.
we
It's been
we
3 years already.
yeah, exactly. But we follow more mental health on this side here. So did you notice any changes in your mental health, like anxiety, depression, or fear, as the disease progressed?
I really can't say that I did. Not up until real recently. I mean, real recently. Um, then again, I grew up with an emotional block with the way my childhood was and everything is. So I don't probably don't process stuff the way I should. Um, so I really, it wasn't up until probably the past year I've actually started dealing with any anxiety where I've actually had to try to control things. And then looking back on other things, a couple of them hospital stays were brought on by panic attacks. When I sit there and look at them now as to what they were at the time. So, I mean, I was dealing with it back then. I guess I really wasn't looking at it.
What do you feel like? I think that anybody who, is having to live with oxygen dependence, carrying the tank and so forth. What do you feel like the hardest part has been of adapting to that emotionally?
Picking and choosing your battles at this point. There's days where, and I'll give you the past 6 months, it's been choosing whether or not to bed rot or not because you just don't feel like getting up. Um, I've had to kind of turn it into a game with myself. Let's see what I can get done today. Because there's most days I don't want the headache of trying to fight because going out and doing something actually hurts. Because with the ILD, I now deal with, let me find it, make sure I can get the name of this right. I've got cardiomyopathy with right heart failure, thanks to the COVID shot. So I deal with a lot of pain across my chest from the cardiomyopathy. Um, so it's some days it's like, well, let's see what we can get done today. How good am I feeling? And how far do I push myself? And then there's days where it's like, I shouldn't have done that, and I'll retreat back a little bit, and I'll lay down for a few days and kind of like ease through it. And some days are harder than others, that's for sure.
What do you feel like, what gives you hope, for the future? What do you, we all need hope, and we hang on to things that keep us hopeful. What do you feel like you hang on to?
I've never really looked at that question. I've never really.
I apologize for
I'm
sounding like a
no,
therapist,
that no,
Carl.
no. That's I was once told the only bad question is the question unasked.
Yeah.
Um, that's just never. That's not one I've asked myself. I just, I wake up in the morning. I'm awake.
Yeah.
Let's go. I mean, you're either gonna wake up or you're not. So you wake up, get what you can get done. If you feel like shit, lay around that day.
Yeah. I
Most
mean,
days, I mean, I've made life comfortable for myself for the most part. I mean, I got my bed that I just kind of plop in all day, unless I can get up and get out and do stuff.
yeah.
And
I just,
I know even with my own wife, sometimes they don't understand. I don't know how Melissa is with you, but sometimes don't understand when you just don't can't get up. You just don't feel like, and not that you can't physically get up. You can, but we also know the consequences we're going to face later on if we get up and do things.
She's gotten real good with looking at me and going, "Yeah, you ain't doing anything today, are you?"
Hmm. I get
but
up.
something, Carl, it sounds like you're a go-getter, you know what I mean? So,
I've
so
always been that way.
yeah, something that I struggled with, because I have always been a driven person also, and something that really resonated with me was a therapist told me one time. I said, it's just hard for me to relax. There's always something to do. I need to be productive. And they helped me realize, like, yeah, when you're doing nothing, you're still doing something. You're caring for the machine, like you're whatever. And so that was hard for me to kind of like reconcile in my head, but that makes total sense. I mean, so self-care is me doing something that's really important.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever looked at it like that.
I know I didn't for a long time. Thank God that therapist, because I've had a lot more enjoyable times of relaxing than I had before.
Yeah, that was when they put me on auction. That one ate me for a while. And then I learned to accept the fact of just do what I could do day to day.
Yeah.
And I know I'm being much older, but you're still like me. You see something outside needs to be done. You want to go out and do it in here. Okay. The rest of your
Oh
body
yeah,
just says, go ahead. I dare you. Okay. But
yeah.
you want to go out and do it. I mean, I lay in bed in the morning, before I get up and say, wow, I really need to trim those shrubs that are outside because they're really starting to grow over. All I can do is plug in the extension cord with the edger and just, cut them
It
down,
takes a
pick
lot
them
of
up, throw them
energy.
in my trunk and bring them down and throw them out. But that's a lot of work. Some days for us when you get out of bed, you know, my when I stand up, the day changes. And I'm sure you'll appreciate that too. When you
Oh
get out of
buddy,
bed, forget about what you thought you were going to do. Now your body's going to tell you what you're going to do today.
yeah. And luckily, between Melissa, one of my brothers here now too, he moved in since the issue with his wife, and so it's like I kind of just a lot of stuff we get him to work on, and I can just kind of sit there in the garage and hey, this needs this, that needs that, or like
Yeah,
the
unfortunately, I can't
couple
do
days it's
that.
been past couple days it's been working on his truck, so it's like I can just sit there and be like, you got to do this, you got to do that.
How's your mental strength been? I mean, what gets you through those difficult days?
I probably just a combination of YouTube, Prime Video, and games. Um, like I was saying before we started, I was trying to figure out my webcam. I've got a Steam Deck that I use as a desktop computer. I've got an actual desktop computer, and those are both sitting. I mean, right here within arm's reach of the bed because I've got my corner set up basically, so I don't have to move very far. Um, I've got my gaming devices and all that, and I've always got something to keep me busy. Oh, that felt good.
So have you found that, like, I know that for a lot of individuals, something that's really helpful is, whatever it is that we're dealing with, when we find others that are dealing with similar things, and make connections that way. Do you feel like speaking with others who, like Steve or other individuals that have dealt with the same or are dealing with the same type of thing to be helpful to you as far as having support and so forth?
I myself don't. I've never really. I don't connect with people very easily in that aspect of stuff.
Well, you and I
So it
actually met
really,
in an IPF chat room, didn't we?
we did. Yeah,
Yeah.
we got connected that way, and that was
Hmm.
we had started talking about that in the podcast you were doing,
Right. Hmm.
and that's how me and you continued talking that way. And we talk here and there. We meme back and forth mainly.
Yes, almost every day.
Um, but yeah, it's with certain people, yes. With others, it depends on how talkative they can be, kind of.
Mhm.
Um, actually, Steve's the only one that I actually still talk to since I've talked to anybody that has dealt with IPS.
Well, it's funny when we were in that chat room. I mean, I first joined it because I figured I would learn. Yeah, I was new to IPF and figured,
Yep.
you hear from people who's had it for a while, hey, there's no experience, there's no knowledge like experience. Someone that's going through it knows what to do. But what I started to notice was that even with that kind of advice, everybody had their own specific advice. And, oh, don't listen to the doctor. Well, as soon as someone tells me, don't listen to the doctor, I've already shut them off. Okay,
Yep.
because I don't, you know, are you a doctor telling me different? No. Okay, so whereas I'm always weary of everything my doctors tell me. Okay, I still will listen to them over something else because he may know something else about my condition I haven't said.
Give me
But
the
this long
advice. I'll go
story
do further
short, I
research.
asked, if you remember, I asked if anybody be willing to do the show that
Yep.
we did back then. And they went off on me in that group. I mean, literally the administrators and everything. Well, you can't do it's like, wait a minute, I have IPF. We're gonna
Yeah.
do a show on both it was caretakers and those that have IPF as an educational show. What is the problem? We're not going to dispense medical advice to anybody. We're talking about what it is and getting the knowledge out there. They still didn't want to hear it. And Carl, I think, PM'd me after that and said, yeah, don't mind them because they're
More than happy
ridiculous.
to do that.
Huh?
So I was more than happy to do that.
Yeah. And,
Just like,
and
man,
that's how we
why
started.
gatekeep the information?
Yeah, that's how we started our conversations. And, we pulled out, I don't know if he pulled out, but I pulled out of the group like right away.
But yeah, it was
And I'm still
when I
not
met you
part
in
of
that
any
first
of those
meeting. I didn't
groups.
go back. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've dipped into a couple that University of Virginia here has given me. It's like I joined in and sat and watched. It's like, no, I'd rather just pass.
Hmm. Tell us a little about um, what I do remember is your the transplant that you were supposed to originally have that you moved down to Virginia for.
Yeah, I lived too far from university. I literally lived too far from IU. Is why they wouldn't do it. Um, that was as simple as that. They didn't care if I could get there in 45 minutes, even though you have what, a 4 hour window, they tell you?
Hmm.
It's like, I can be here within the hour. It's not a problem. No, it didn't matter. You're not within certain circle. It's like, wow.
What what reasons other was that the only reason that they gave
The only
you
reason they gave
for?
me, that's the only one I can remember. Yeah, it was basically that I lived too far from Indiana University. They wanted me to relocate to right there in Indianapolis. It's like, I'm on disability. I don't have that kind of money.
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't think people have learned. I mean, I watched stories, as I said last night. I watched this one guy who lived close enough, had everything set up to go, and the insurance refused to pay for it.
Oh man.
I
Wow.
mean, think about that one where you get to the door where you've got the door open now. Okay, you're in proximity, you're ready to go, and your insurance company turns around and says, "Well, we're not paying for this." And if they're not
Yeah,
paying for it, you don't get it. You know,
yeah,
that's
I had pre-authorization on mine and everything.
hmm.
The insurance pre-authorized it. Everything else was good to go. I just didn't live within close enough range to the university.
See, now
On
I
on
know somebody that goes way back, that real early on incarnation of the Your Life Matters show with Jen and Steve at that point. But we had on a young lady, she was 17, she's turning 18, and she had cystic
Oh,
fibrosis. And she needed a lung transplant to live in. The insurance company wouldn't pay for it. And back then, and we're talking 10, 12 years ago, it was like almost three, $400,000 that the dad was going to have to come up with. And he's a simple farmer, simple blue collar worker, just had enough to, you know, take care of his three kids, his wife, and
be
three
lucky to see
kids.
that amount of money in his lifetime.
Right. And there's just, we tried to help get like a GoFundMe type of deal and try to raise money. School tried to, I mean, this girl was full of life, yet she didn't have that much of it left. Mackenzie was her name, I remember now. Okay, it's starting to come back to me a little bit. I'm old, so hey, listen, I forgot my wife's anniversary, as you saw. We posted the other day. Okay, I
You're
forgot
still
our
talking? You're
anniversary a
still
couple of
talking
days.
to us?
Yes, she's actually the one that
Uh,
reminded me, but very nicely reminded me the other night at dinner that our anniversary was a couple of days. No,
you're still feeling that
and
lump on
I'm
the back
sitting
of
there
your head, aren't
saying,
you?
"What's wrong with my phone?" Because I could have sworn I set that on my phone to remind me, but no, it's. But she's been studying for the NCLEX almost day and night, so and I've been trying to stay out of her way and in with the show, but it gets really tough um when you find out you can't get, you know, for us, it's like a new lease on life for at least 10 or 15 years if we take care of ourselves, before we're going to need another one. But
Yep.
that's still 10 or 15 years of ditching this.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a couple of days I've taken it off and just kind of stood there and been like almost come to a panic attack, like where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Because it's like and it's weird not being there. And it would probably be nice for it not to be there again.
Eric,
what do you
before you ask your question, um, who was it? I don't believe it was your uncle, but Who is it?
Andy
Andy
Sauer.
Sauer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you said the first name, I remembered the last name. Now
Yeah.
we had, I don't know if you remember Carl way back, but Andy was on the show and had the lung transplant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
And
really?
I remember the day your brother Adam would give me his phone number. And the day he called me back, he was on the roof of a Mexican restaurant, on the roof, fixing an
That'd
air
be Andy.
conditioner. Okay. And it was,
Yeah, I remember you telling me about him.
yeah. And it's like, dude, what are you doing up? He's like, I'm enjoying life. He was a bass player with the Columbus Symphony Orchestra, Bartholomew County Symphony Orchestra in Indiana. Uh, was enjoying his new lease on life. And then I think his meds got mixed up, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, something
He
along
took
those
either the
lines.
wrong meds or the wrong dosage. He got confused and actually passed from that.
Oh no.
And that's so sad. I
He
mean,
was a he's a great guy, man. Honestly, one of the nicest guys ever.
he
Just
had
such
told
such a
me,
happy
actually, I
person.
remember the last thing he told me after the show was over. And he said, listen, he said, just understand, you got any questions, anytime, day or night, you have my phone number. Pick up the phone and call me. He says, and I'll walk you through whatever, even if I'm just there for support, I'll walk you through anything that is going on. And I never forget that. I was touched by that. And then to hear, well, it was only a couple of months after that I think that he passed away. And it was like, wow. Okay. You almost like say, he's my idol. He's my little hero. He got that. He got to walk away from this, and got
Yeah.
to enjoy life a little bit. I mean, heck, in my point, 15 years, that put me in my 80s. I'd be really happy, to make it that far and not to have to wear oxygen. But,
I'm not
again,
down
it
and out
doesn't
yet.
cure the disease. It only cures your lungs. And then the
Right.
disease will take over the lungs again.
Again.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I'm not down and out yet. I'm just shooting for try number 2 at UVA. I don't know when I'm going to do it yet, but they just simply, with this past time, they turned me down. That I just simply wasn't a good fit for their program yet. I guess I don't know what their exact reason was. That was pretty much the one I was given that I put on Facebook was the dismissal letter.
I
Here's a
remember.
question for you. If we have somebody who's watching and they, that maybe they're having issues with their breathing or something, something's going on. Um, can you give us a basic idea of just kind of what symptoms people should probably look for? And then if they are noticing symptoms, what you recommend they would do?
Um, as far as I mean, with every case is really different. Even with me, it was I wouldn't necessarily notice a breathing issue, as I noticed something else could be wrong before that would be, something leading up to it. So I mean, in any case, I mean, your shortness of breath is your primary. Um, but if you're a person that walks around with constant sinus problems, um, I've had doctors say that my stuff could have been triggered. I suffered from GERD, gastroesophageal reflux.
Mhm.
Um, that can lead to breathing issues simply from regurgitating in your sleep.
Mhm.
Um, but if you shortness of breath is one thing that you just notice, oh, well, look, I can't even climb the 3 steps I got going into the house.
Mhm.
Don't hesitate to go get checked out. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself on a leash someday.
And stick with it too, because I know myself when I first started going to be checked, I was just like, I forgot where we were. I want to say we were in Kentucky and visiting one of the caves or something in Kentucky. And I remember there was like 2 flights of stairs you had to walk out of, from the cave. And steep steps up. I still remember them very well. But I remember it took me almost like 5 minutes to get up to the top of the steps. And all I kept thinking in my head was, you're fat pig and you're out of shape. I need to go back to the gym. I need to exercise and stuff. But that didn't help. Okay. When I
Nope.
went there, it was, And then, of course, you go to your doctor, doctor first checks your heart. Okay, make sure your heart's okay. And they went through the 9 yards with my heart. Nothing. Well, I don't know what else it could be. And my wife, who said that, say, what about his lungs? You ever think of checking his lungs? Well, yeah, I mean, we can if you want,
You
and
would
when
think.
they did
What do you mean if you want?
yeah, well, they checked the sonogram or whatever they did first. That was the first time they started seeing something. And then they did a CAT scan. And, that's when they started to become concerned about that. But you're right. If you're going to, listeners out there, if you're starting to have problems breathing, any kind of breathing, that's a warning sign. And you know as well as I do, the earlier you catch this, the better.
Yeah. Oh,
You
by
know,
far.
yeah. I mean, they've told me that there was something, something here that controls the oxygen coming in and out.
Diaphragm.
It was not the diaphragm, begins with a pH. That's like pharynx. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on it. But that could have been treated with medication within the first year, and I would have been okay. But it seems that after the first year is up, that's it. It can't be treated after that. And
Hmm.
for those that are watching, probably up on the top of the screen here right now, I'll have what it is because I'll look it up and pop it in there so that people will know what I'm talking about. But it's really something that you have to stick with your doctors because even your regular general practitioners really don't have a good idea of what you're going through. They only know the basics. It's either your heart or your lungs. That's all they know. And
You got to advocate for yourself.
make sure your pulmonologist is one of the best pulmonologists that are out there. Otherwise, they're just going to treat you for something you don't have. I know
Yeah.
when I came here to Florida, the very first thing I was out of my OFEF. And I went to him and said, hey, oh, by the way, I need you to renew my OFEF. And he said, no. And I think to myself, oh, he's a great doctor. And I was like, why not? And he said, because I'm not convinced that's what you got. And I'll be danged if I'm going to give you medication that for that. He said, you're not going to die if you do have it and do need it. He says, but no. So I might give it to you. And when they did other testing, and then he went back and read all the other reports, he found out the other doctor just wasn't paying attention to the results. So we have to advocate for ourselves,
Yeah.
because, it's us that has to walk around with this on all day long. Dr. Davis, I was going to send you a catalog just so you didn't feel lost and out, just so you can put it on and feel like you were part of the conversation today.
One of these things is not like the other.
Yeah. Now I know we don't have Melissa is right here, but you can answer a few questions. Um, what's it like for her as a caregiver, but also your spouse, the mother of your children, to have to deal with you and your condition? And I don't mean that you, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh, she deals with me, trust me. Um, I don't know what I'd do without her, without her, because I mean, she does a good 70 to 80% of my up and down throughout the day.
Mhm.
Um, for the most part, I mean, I get up and get my own stuff, but usually I'll have her, hey, you're going out to the kitchen, hey, you're doing this, hey, you're doing that to save myself the trip.
Yeah.
Um, mentally, I think as far as her, I'm in the same boat you are, Steve. I'm amazed she hasn't gotten rid of me yet. um, she does quite well. She does really well with, I say, putting up with me. It's quite literally putting up with me.
What
It,
role do you feel like self-care for her? I mean, obviously, she has to take care of herself and then she's helping to care for you. Are there things that she has found helpful as far as like just taking care of her or that she does for herself?
Spending money. That's no joke either. Because I mean, all her family's in Indiana. Um, so I mean, she's on the phone with her niece all the time, and it's that. And I mean, she just hangs out with me all day, and
I'm sure,
money.
you look at it like I do. It's not what they signed up for when they came in. They didn't look at, I always say, Jen didn't look at me and say, hey, you know what? I want to marry this guy because we're going to have to deal with his, thinking I want to take care of him. Personally, I think she became a nurse so she could figure out a way to kill me and medically, and nobody would ever find out. But that's after 22 years of marriage. But no, next we're going to be doing a live show with Dr. Davis's wife, Erin, who's been on our show, and we're going to do a couples counseling online. No, but
Oh, that should be interesting.
yeah, I know. But it's got to be tough for them.
Yeah.
I step back and let Jen do what Jen needs to do. If she wants to talk on the phone for hours at a time, go talk on the phone for hours at a time. She talk to her daughter, she talks to her friends, and even when she goes to school, sometimes she hangs out like a little longer with one or two of the girls. That go for it.
Yeah,
Because you're going to come back here and yeah, I can still go out. I'm only on, they say, 4 liters, and I've actually, you're not listening, Dr. Mayrod. I'm actually using a portable machine sometimes when I go out, which only goes up to 3 liters continuous, and you and I both know that's like 2.6 liters of
yeah,
oxygen that it's giving. But you know what? If I'm going to go out to dinner, what am I doing? I'm walking from the car into the restaurant
yep,
and sitting down and eating dinner. So I'm not going to lug tanks around with me. And if I'm there with friends and we want to hang out and talk for a while, let's say like I went with Dr. Davis and Aaron, we're all at the dinner. I don't want to say, excuse me, like 40 minutes through, I need to go out and change my tanks, and I don't feel like rolling that stupid wheel thing, so I carry everything like, the shoulder bag,
yeah,
and it gives me some mobility to go out and do some things. I can go shopping, everything else, and I can psych myself into it. But by the end of the day, when I come home, that's it. Now you've wiped me out. Okay.
yeah. I feel you there. I mean, I get out. She's got all her doctor's appointments and everything we do for her. I still drive, still do all the driving.
So do
Of course,
I.
my wife never had her driver's license. Um, but and being on 8 liters, being stuck on tanks, I don't leave the house with no less than 2 tanks. Um, but it's like once I get in the car, well, I'm not leaving that seat. So I let myself level back off and I turn my oxygen back down. I sit down to 3 liters,
Mm-hmm.
and I can make that tank last an hour and a half on 3 liters.
Right.
So I mean, there's how I get out of the house all the time for the most part. As far as Walmart goes, I don't step foot in Walmart anymore. Walmart Plus.
Yeah. Hey, now they
Um,
have a plus home version where not only will they bring it to your house, they'll actually put it away for you. I'm
yeah, but
not
we
sure
don't
I
like people
want
coming
that
down our
personally, but
driveway.
no, but they have now where they'll actually
I'm
come
out in the
into your
woods.
home.
Yeah, they don't want to do that. I'm out in the woods. um, they but yeah, I use Walmart pickup. Don't do it. I use Walmart pickup and her doctor's appointments, my doctor's appointments. How I get out of the house and keep a bit of my sanity in play.
Even with myself, I have 2 e-tanks always at all times in the back of my car. I have 2 D tanks on the chair. And usually going from the car to that, I use the C tank just to go to the car. But as soon as I
Nice
get in the
spare tank
car, I
you
take
got
the
laying
C tank
around.
off, turn on the E, and use that when I'm in the car. I mean, I go through tanks like faster,
How
but you
many
know
how many
what?
tanks you got sitting around the house?
46.
Oh, you got me beat.
Yeah. I
I got
don't know
30.
how I got that
Easy.
many, but they just seem to give me like almost like 12 or 15 of each when I got them. And it's like, yeah, they come every 2 weeks, but it's usually like 3 or 4 of each size tank if there's not even that many that they're exchanging. It's but you know what? The insurance is still willing to do it. And
Well, I mean, they pay. Have you ever looked at how the insurance works on it?
no, they pay for all the tanks.
They pay for it for 5 years.
Yeah, okay.
They pay for in 3 years. They pay for 5 years worth of tanks and everything else. So they have 2 years. They have to service you that essentially they're not getting paid, and then it renews. I mean, they don't. And actually, it's not like they submit so many tanks each month. The only
Right.
thing that they technically submit is just a simple rental agreement.
Hmm. And your cannulas. Sometimes
Yeah,
they run those, and I always try to grab
that's it.
3 for the guy every time he shows up. So, um, let me ask you if you could share one message with others about IPF and the life-limiting illness once they get it. And we already talked about what to get people before time, to look out for. But once you're diagnosed with it, what advice would you have for them?
Don't stop. Do not stop. Don't be the type of person that just lays there day in and day out, day in and day out, not doing nothing or
Don't
being the
just
one
kill
that
you
does
faster.
nothing. It will. It will. Literally, just sitting there being a bum will kill you fast.
Hmm.
Yes.
I get it constantly where my doctor tells you got to keep going out and doing things, got to keep going out and doing things. But then you know the feeling of some days you just ain't happening.
Yeah, there's some days
Okay,
it's
and
just
it's not
not happening.
laziness. It's just that you know what the extent of your body is that day and your energy level. But the flip side is, like he keeps telling me to go to the gym, which I'm part of Planet Fitness. There are some specific exercises that he wants me to do that actually increases your lung capacity. So, I can't complain because what I'm doing actually has held my PFT test level. Actually, they've got even improved over the last year and a half. So, and now I'm on this big weight loss kick here again too. So that's helps your breathing on top of that as well. So,
Somebody should have told my body because it decided to start gaining finally.
well, I I mean I like to eat. It's as simple as
I do
that.
too. It's part of the problem.
Dr. Davis, ask your brother Adam. He'll know. But we used to go out before paranormal investigations. We used to eat. Okay, but now I try to watch what I eat, how much I eat. I'm also diabetic, so it actually helps my diabetes losing some weight on top of it, and it's helping my mental frame of mind. When you go in and your doctor tells you you're doing well, keep up whatever you're doing. You're okay. At least you're staying steady. That's a big plus, I know, mentally for me. What about for you?
It's a plus. It's not a real big plus, but it is a plus.
Hmm.
Um, because usually my doctors are like, "Well, what's bugging you this time?" And it's like, there's nothing like mine. Really don't like to give me the well, nothing's changed speech. You know, whatever you're doing, keep it up. It's like, are you doing anything different? No. Okay. Do I need to do something different? I mean, I've dealt with it for 7 years now, and it's like I'll try something different. Bring it on, dog. I'm busy.
See, my doctor will never let that go. He always, even the last time I saw him, which sometimes I actually question why I was even going to see him. But what he said was that he's still finding there's another doctor he's trying to refer me to. Okay, because this doctor will help. So that's going to be important. So, Carl, friend, you and I have so much in common. Our political beliefs, Indiana with Dr. Davis here too, because I concluded him in that one. The limitations of our daily lives, wearing the cannula all day and night, fighting a disease that science really knows minimal about and how to heal. Um, you know, we go through so much. Um, we wake up every day really thinking about making it through life. We want to make it through every day. Okay, we want to be happy and wake up tomorrow. I don't know about you, but when you got change of diagnosis, did you see like more of your life extended in front of you? Whereas IPF, basically, they were telling almost everybody you had a limited window of life left. And
Yeah,
that
man.
sort
Like
of
the,
takes.
when they had you under that umbrella of the IPF, it was kind of like they kept you with that shadow of, oh, you've only got so much time.
Mhm.
Whereas, yeah, no, there was a bit of weight lifted off on that one.
And it's a strong mental weight. I don't think people realize, you and I go through it and been there and live it. So I don't think many of the listeners, I know Dr. Davis understands as a therapist, but what you go through on a daily basis. I always refer to it as that shot clock, the old shot clocks. That I used to see that when you used to play basketball, when we were back in school, all of us back in school, and you had that little timer thing, a
Countdown.
black and white thing. I always saw that in front of me, spinning, because when I had IPF, hell, we first looked it up and said 3 to 5 years. When you looked it up online, so, oh no,
Yep.
we've advanced that. Oh, okay, good, yeah, it's about 8, 9, 10 years now, and it's like, well, damn, okay, that's still, my dad's 93. I had planned on living, at least my late 80s, and early 90s. But when they took that diagnosis away, that clock went away.
Yep.
And mentally, I became I don't think even Jen saw it. I went into a different state of mind because that mortality question, it's still there for us. You know it as well as I
Oh, it's
do.
still there. It's just a matter of
But
time.
it's not as heavy as it was before.
No,
And I mean,
it's
and
not.
you're younger than I am. You have a lot more of life left to live. You get your children. You have 2 kids, am I correct?
Yeah, I have no children.
Oh, no children. Okay.
No, I have no children. What you're thinking of is my niece and nephew.
Okay, Denise. Okay. That's what I remember seeing the pictures
Yeah,
of then. Okay. But it's still you want to spend time with your wife. You want to spend time with your niece and nephew, with your brother and families and stuff. And nobody wants to just turn around and say, that's it. I'm amazed at those that say, I understand I'm going to die and resign themselves that they're going to die because I'd be one that'd be fighting up to the day that I go.
and some people it would cause them mentally check out ahead of time.
Hmm. And that's why we did the show today on IPF. I actually saw your name online one day on my Facebook, and that spurred a thought in my head. And I ran it by Dr. Davis and said, hey, I've done this before with a caretaker. And remember, there was like 4 or 5 of us inside the room, but
Yep.
We never really looked back then from a mental health side of it. And I don't think when anybody looks at when you're walking to when you do go shopping or you do go someplace, I don't think people realize what we're going through, other than the fact that they're being polite and holding a door or offering to help us because we're wearing oxygen.
If they even bother offering anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's it's
I
not
mean,
even, and it's not that it should be a consideration for them, but they should also be aware of what other people are experiencing. I mean, we look, I hate to even bring like politics up into it, but just I want to use Charlie Kirk as an example of the number of people that just are insensitive at that point.
yeah,
Okay, whether or not you liked him particularly,
it shouldn't matter.
it's unimportant. It's a human life, and I relate that the same way with what we're going through the lung disease. You may not like Carl. Well, you may not like Steve, and there's probably a bunch of those okay out there, but the fact is that you have to respect what we're struggling through on a daily basis. I sometimes I think some of my neighbors look at me and think, his ass is lazy. I'd have been outside doing that. Well, you know what? 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I'd be outside putting you to shame. Okay, I just can't do it anymore. The days I have it, I
Yep.
can do it. And I go out and do it. But the days I don't have it, it could be a month before I'm going to have that day again. And people need to be aware of that and understand the mental issues that we're going through at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I think people would treat us a little differently. So, so
I'm sure they would.
I know I speak on behalf of Dr. Davis as well as myself when I say thank you for being here with us. Okay. I love to Melissa because she's taking care of you, which allows you to be here with us every time we need to reach out, that you're always there. Unfortunately, we learned to mask our emotions and feelings so well, even our physicians and families may not even realize it anymore, what we're going through inside. But like they said, those who know, I guess is a good way of putting it. So thanks for
Yeah.
helping us shine a light on all of this, all the suffering from a lung disease or cancer or any serious end of life condition. God bless you, and please keep a smile on your face, friend.
Thank you so much, Carl.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Dr. Davis, many patients with IPF like Carl are told about lung transplants. They're not candidates. Okay, we saw that with Andy Sauer. Okay, the joys and happiness of a successful transplant, but even that joy can be short-lived. And I can tell you from watching the videos last night, Andy's story is not a lone story. There are many people that got that opportunity and really only got about a year or two out of it. So, um, what role does palliative care play, and how do you see it connecting with mental health support?
I think so. Palliative care is really important because it kind of allows the person to focus on both areas that they would need to, as well as the family. Same thing, where we're dealing with our daily life and making the changes needed for today, while also planning for the future. And I think that that's really the best way to handle things.
I mean, how do they find meaning and joy in the present when they plan for the future? I mean, does that help them, find that joy?
I think so. I mean, I think it can. I don't know that I'd have to ask a person coping with it.
Well, I can tell you, I plan for the future, but I've also let each day come as it
Yeah,
comes. Because,
yeah,
like Jen always will remind me, especially now as a nurse, okay, she'll remind me that whereas, you're only on 3 or 4 liters of oxygen today, in a week you could be on 7.
Yeah.
And things can change. So you need to get up and do things while you can. And I think that goes out to everyone in life. I think you should enjoy yourself now while you can,
Yes.
because everybody waits to retirement to do things. Yeah, I'm going to travel a lot when I retire, and then God forbid someone gets a heart attack or a stroke or lung disease or cancer, and that changes. And all those years when you could, you didn't.
Yep.
So, in Jen and I's case, I'm actually glad we did. While we could, we still would have done more, but hey, I'll enjoy what we did. So I want to go to two final questions, then we can wrap up today's show. What do you think healthcare systems could do and should do about being better to support not just the patients with IPF, but their caregivers and families?
I think that I wish more insurance companies, or let me even say, I don't even know if it'd be the insurance company, but I wish that more providers, had supportive type of groups, or that sort of resource for individuals. Um, I think so. Educating the clients, their families, our community is important. Um, Also, adequate training for caregivers. Uh, something that, and I don't even know if this is a thing, but I'm kind of brainstorming this, but I wonder if there are insurance companies that, as part of, like, if a certain diagnosis is made, that there's money for like caregiver training for family members. That may be something that could help. I don't know.
I know with the IPF, they had put me on the medicine OFEV, as we talked about.
Mhm.
That was done through an organization called Open Doors. They were out of Kentucky, Louisville. And it was the same pharmaceutical company that created the drug OFEV, that they did this plan Open Doors. And Open Doors took funding from corporations, um, and helped pay for the drugs for people,
Yeah,
because a lot of companies won't pay, 10,000 a month for drugs. But one of the things that I thought was interesting about them, you were assigned a nurse, okay, and you had the same nurse. It wasn't just someone different. And she called you every month,
hmm,
and she talked to you about, your condition. 10, 15 minutes. With me, it would last 25 minutes with her, but she loved every moment of it. But she'd go over things. She would talk about, ask how Jen was doing. She'd ask how the doctor, what he was doing, how he was talking, because they would go back and educate the
yeah,
physician on IPF. And they would get you the resources you needed if you needed something, like if Jen needed, a support group and stuff. And for
yeah,
those that are listening here, we will be, I trust me when I say, a comprehensive list in the description of all these places you can contact to get help. It's out there. Just you have to reach out for it. Like we said, your healthcare systems don't automatically do that, though. A lot of them, I know, even Florida Blue, which I have, which is Anthem, has support groups that they offer us. I get emails from them all the time. If you need to talk to someone, there are groups out there for people that need help. And I think that's great. They do it for seniors. I'm not sure they do it for other age categories. So I'm going to ask you one final question. I asked this one already to Carl, but if you could give one message to families facing an end of life lung disease, what would it be?
honestly, I would say don't give up hope, and definitely utilize the resources that are available. Those resources are there for a reason, um, and definitely access those, because I know a lot of times individuals, sometimes, they're scared. They're scared to ask for help or to reach out. But please know that there are teams and teams and teams of people that want nothing more than to help if you just reach out to them.
Exactly. So to Carl, once again, thank you for your openness and honesty in sharing your journey with us. It takes incredible courage to sit in front of a microphone and talk about something so deeply personal, the fear, the challenges, day-to-day reality of living with IPF. I think we actually caught him a couple of times. I don't think he was expecting some of the questions that came at him today. See, we don't give our guests the questions. Dr. Davis and I discussed them, but we don't give it to them. We hope his struggles, as well as his moments of grace, will resonate with many who are walking the same path. What we've heard tonight, but is more than a story about lung disease. It's a story about what it means to live fully in the face of uncertainty. It's about the emotional toll of illness, the strength of family, and the importance of support systems. And it's a reminder that mental health is not separate from physical health. They're woven together. When one suffers, so does the other. When one is supported, hope and resilience grow stronger for the other. Now, for those of you who are listening who are affected by pulmonary fibrosis, ILD, or any chronic illness, just always remember you're not alone. Organizations like the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation exist to provide resources, education, and support for patients and caregivers alike. And again, their information will be in the description. And we encourage you to reach out to learn, to lean on your community, on your friends, counselors, and medical professionals. You may think your doctor only cares about your physical health. They do actually, the good ones do care about your mental health as well. And if anything else, they'll even refer you to someone like Dr. Davis and it's not really treatment for support. I hate to look at it to say treatment because you think, well, there's nothing wrong with me. It's for support for what you got. And remember, here on Your Life Matters Show podcast, every story deserves to be heard. We believe that in the midst of pain, there's a space for connection, love, and the reminder that life is still worth living. Now, we ask you to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say and maybe hear about your story. Remember, you can go to yourlifematterspodcast.com to learn more about the show, contact us, to get those Your Life Matter pajamas, as we say every week, but all that stuff is there. Now, before we close this episode, on a personal note, I smiled throughout this whole story here. But this has been a very tough story even for me tonight. Like, it makes a difference. I was originally misdiagnosed with IPF, correctly with restrictive lung disease. As I say, same crap, different day. Carl's condition, sadly, is much further along than I am. But his and I, our hearts and minds are really in the same place. It's hard some days to smile and even do this podcast. Look all chipper, present a positive, informative show. I'm so fortunate to have such an amazing friend in Dr. Davis here, who talking to makes me smile. I mean, just look at him. I mean, just look at that face. It makes me smile. Feel love and gratitude, which makes each day a lot easier. Please, I beg all of you, make sure you have someone in your life that you can lean on if you need to. And also, if you can, be that person for somebody else too. You realize how important it is for you. Be that person for somebody else. And that's part of what this show is about. It's being there for other people and showing them that they're not alone and that there are other people that care about them. So as we close tonight's episode, let's carry Carl's story forward. His message of strength, every breath, every moment, every life truly matters. Now, thank you for being part of the conversation. Until next time, please take care of yourself and those around you. And always remember, your life matters. God bless you. And we hope to see you again next week.
Thank you for joining us for this week's new episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Please be sure to join us again next Thursday for another great episode with your hosts, Steve Hodgson and psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis. Please remember to subscribe to our channel if you have not already done so, and hit the like button and leave a comment. Your help with this helps us reach a wider audience that may need our help.